Infrastructure Services Committee of 19th of March 2025. I would ask Marlene McDonald if she'll please open the meeting with the karakia, please.
Kia ora. E tō mātou e te raki, manaaki tia mai mātou mō tēnei hui, ako nei o ngā mea whakahere ki a tātou katoa ko I karaiti tō mātou ari ki Āmene.
Amen. Thank you. We had Jennifer Scott for a public forum, but I do not see her in the public gallery, so I assume then that she has not turned up. And we don't have anybody else for public forum, so we'll move on to apologies. We have an apology for early departure from Ms. Matahari Atariki and an apology for absence from Councillor Ackland. I move that we accept those. Accepted. Seconded, Councillor Walker. All those in favour? Carried. Confirmation of the agenda. I move that the committee confirms the agenda with the following addition of a late confidential report as item C2, commercial matters regarding Green Island. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mayhem. Councillor Vandervis.
I just wanted to register that I'm unhappy about the confidential part of this agenda. I have had an explanation from the Chief Executive, and I thank her for giving me that promptly, because I've only looked at this only yesterday, and the opportunity for going into public is something which I understand is not available at this juncture, but I just wanted to say that I'm concerned that this whole issue is being dealt with in non-public, and hope that we can actually at some future date deal with it publicly. I accept that there's perhaps some legal wrinkle that we need to sort out today in non-public, but I just wanted to register that I'm unhappy about short notice on part of this agenda and non-public as well.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Okay, then I'll put it. All those in favour? Against?
No, recorded please.
Carried. Declaration of interest. Members are reminded of the need to stand aside from decision making when a conflict of interest arises between their role as an elected representative, any private or other external interests they might have. Are there any changes to the declarations of interest? Given that there are no changes, I move that the committee notes the elected members' interest register as attached A and confirms the proposed management plan for elected or independent members' interests. Seconded, Councillor Gilbert. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Confirmation of minutes. The Infrastructure Services Committee meeting 18th of February 2025. The only thing I will just in the items for consideration, but the Chair, Councillor Gary, had asked about control of glass in certain parts of the city. That will be a matter of consultation in the local alcohol policy consultation process. Thank you. Anyone comments on the Councillor Houlihan?
Could we put a note in about the tertiary precinct meetings to see if they could get restarted and have a discussion about that, please?
It's a confirmation of the minutes of the previous meeting.
Right. Okay, thank you. I thought it was consideration for the Chair, sorry. Thank you.
No, that's at the end of the meeting. Okay, now obviously now you have something for the Chair. I will keep that in mind when we get to the end of the meeting. Any commentary on the minutes? Okay, therefore I'll put it that the committee confirms the public part of the minutes of the Infrastructure Services Committee meeting held on 18th February 2025 as a correct record. Seconded, Councillor Weatherall. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Part A reports, Infrastructure Service Committee Forward Work Programme. I have to get that up. Do we have any questions? I do, but I just... Councillor Benson-Pope.
I thank you, Mr. Chairman. I searched in vain for reference to the parking management real-time information project. Can we have an update on what's happening, please?
Thank you. I actually have Mr. Spears in the gallery. He'll be able to give you a detailed update.
Good morning. So at the moment we are putting putting together a procurement for static wayfinding signage, which will be in place by the end of this financial year. And we are just costing options for real-time wayfinding, and that'll go up for consideration for a procurement in the next probably 3 to 4 months.
Can I just ask further about the reasons for the delay? I mean, I think, as I've previously commented, this decision was made in the previous triennium, so it's already more than 3 years old, and I think it's been on an important issue that people are concerned about. I'm looking for a reason why it has taken so long.
It's been a staged process, so we have brought in the parking methods that we need for the new technology. We're currently working on the enforcement system we need for the parking. That contract is being signed, I believe, this week. We've put in LPR counting systems at some of our sites, and now we're in a position where we can bring in the wayfinding signage.
Thank you. I think we'll all agree that the number plate recognition in particular is extremely useful when it works properly, but that's another issue. But I'm wondering when we can expect, or drivers in the city can expect to see the wayfinding and the directions that we're looking for to where parking is available, either on street or preferably in buildings, and how many spaces are available. How many months will it be before that will be live?
We have funding for that in the next financial year. The exact date I can't give at the moment.
Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll ask this carefully because I ask this in the context of knowing that staff are under a lot of work pressure. But the Caversham Tunnel project, little in bold there, letters have been sent to service providers to start negotiations. No disrespect, but that reads to me that this has got an extremely long timeline attached to it, and of course see nothing in blue that intends at any point to bring reports or updates. So is there, I don't know who wants to speak to that, is there a better way of embracing this so there's clearer ways forward, so that I'm not sitting here in 6 months saying how did the letters to utility providers go, blah blah blah. So I don't know, I don't necessarily need that now, but it would be nice to some way corral this so it's more efficient. I'm looking at you, Mr. McLean.
Yeah, and I'm looking at Ms. Benson, who's busy waving over there, so she may be able to give you an update right now.
So, Councillor, we have, I can't remember what the full figure is, 1.2 odd million, it'll be there or thereabout, for the first section of the Tunnels Trail. That'll take us through Caversham and, through Chain Hills, through till probably the fence or potentially beyond the fence, but way before the active railway line. So we have that funding in place. We don't have any funding for the other end. So the funding for the remainder of the Tunnels Trail is currently sitting in year 9 of the 9-year plan. So all we're trying to do with the Caversham Tunnel is to start the people who have services through that location thinking about us having to move in the future. On the face of it, it says you don't have to move for another 9 years, but we all know that a reset of the 10-year plan could change that, or a change in the government policy statement settings. So we're just trying to mobilise that whilst not using any money at that end, because the only money we have is for the Chain Hills end. And we're more than happy to give an update on the Chain Hills end, because that'll be where the physical work is being undertaken. But really, the Caversham end is just about signalling to people that at some point we will be through here. We don't have a timeline for it. Yeah,
more than happy to, but it's also an item I'm interested in as well, so I'll have some questions.
So, and no disrespect, thank you for that answer, and this is meant with no disrespect, but it's not unfair of me to say that, I mean, I'm around this table now coming on 6 years, and prior to that being involved in this project, it's not unfair to say that the groups advocating for this have been working on this for 15 to 20 years and have had similar responses for that time. And I won't use the word promises, but suggestions that better progress might have been made. So I'm speaking on behalf of particularly the Tunnels Trails group, who I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, through you, who perhaps quite rightly feel a little bit of frustration around this. So all I'm asking for here is not so much timelines, but also a bit more honesty if we're absolutely not going to do it. So my question is, it's in here as a possibility. If it's not, I'm sensing it's not going to be possible under the auspices of the funding we have, which is a bit more honesty to that group about not dangling that little bit of something in front of them which is not actually going to happen. Sorry, that's a long-winded question, but I think I speak on behalf of quite a number of people around the table.
We are still in question time, but we'll be able to speak to this as well. Mike, the reason it's sitting here now as an item was specifically I asked it to be put on an item so it would stay alive, and that's because before I even got on council, I answered a Facebook question of what if you get on, what are you going to do about the Caversham Tunnel? So that was 9 years ago, and letters were sent 9 years ago. So actually, it's not a criticism of what's gone, but actually I'm asking from the chair's position that we actually ask the people who have utilities in that tunnel, when are they going to get them out? Not, we want to get it out one day. Within the next 5 years, well, actually, maybe we'll ask to send another letter. Will you be able to make your utilities safe for humans in the tunnel within the next 5 years? And that includes a letter to our own Three Waters department, because while there's a transport spend, it is the sewer line underneath and the potential methane release from the sewer line, which is one of the reasons that the tunnel is a confined space and can't be entered at the moment. What I see happening is that we are starting from Wingatui and moving towards the Caversham Tunnel, and then we'll get to the Caversham Tunnel and we haven't got any of the utilities moved out. And so to hear councillors, I know I'm giving a speech now too, but to hear Councillor Walker's question and my intention, it's that yes, we're not going into the Caversham Tunnel today, but it also offers access between Caversham and Kaikoura Valley Road now, and was being used by people before we closed it. So it still can bring functionality immediately without the requirement of the whole Chain Horse Tunnel to be completed.
Thank you, if I may, through the chair. Can I suggest that we bring to the June committee meeting a response to that letter and next steps? Yeah,
that would be great. I mean, we own one of the companies.
Correct.
So it's Aurora and Nova. And I guess that would be the question is, we'd ask those companies, where is it on your work program to get these utilities made to be safe to be, they either be removed or encapsulated in some way? Wonderful. No, that would be great. And I think honestly, if we just do this, it'll be an efficient use of our time, because we agree we're not going into the tunnel immediately, but I know what's going to happen if we don't.
Yep.
Cool. Thank you. Any other questions around that point? I have just two more. The Mosgiel transport study on page 30. It's more a case of actually, Ms. Benson, can you define it's an expectations for the local communities as to what this study will do, and then where, because you mentioned next steps. This study will be a first study and then lead on to, can you explain exactly what this study will do and what it will lead on to?
Yeah, so this study is at a program level, so looking at Mosgiel from a program perspective, and we'll do that alongside NZTA, because they're doing a similar study looking at the transport corridors coming into and out of Mosgiel, and then that'll form a program of works that we put into the next National Land Transport Fund round for funding. But I think my point in the forward work program is what I often think it sounds really cumbersome, but we are following the NZTA process, because it's very strictly here, because we know that we'll probably rely on co-funding. So my apologies for how how cumbersome that may sound. It's just a process.
It's more a case of there's a lot of talk of the heavy traffic bypass and trucks on Gordon Road, and I guess my question is, will this one address the heavy traffic bypass in this study, or would that be a follow-up study after this one?
So I've always said that the Mosgiel Transport Study will look at, all that is needed in Mosgiel, of which the heavy vehicle bypass may or may not be an outcome, because I not having done the study yet, can't predicate the outcome. But it would seem likely on the face of it. I guess it could be an outcome, but I'm always very careful that I say that program is a study of the transport routes around Mosgiel, which in the outcome may or may not be a heavy vehicle bypass.
Yeah, I think that clarified it. So bottom line is the heavy vehicle bypass will come under the greater considerations of the transport analysis, but this is not a assessment of a heavy traffic bypass standing alone by itself.
No, and I think, if I might say, one of the reasons that we have to do this really, really well, not that we wouldn't do it really well, but if we were to get to a point that we were to say to NZTA, we would like to take over Gordon Road as a local road, and we would like you to take over the heavy vehicle bypass as a state highway, then we would have had to have thought about and built that heavy vehicle bypass to a standard that NZTA would accept.
Right, so there's quite a lot to be worked here. When do you think that report, starting in June, how long do you think it will take to?
We're starting the data methodology.
Yeah, so the team have actually started collecting some data now. I think they're concentrating first on the freight piece, and so they have started slowly now. Yep.
Good, thank you. And a rough idea of delivery?
Yeah, so it would be we've got that year's window for the money that's available. So we would be planning to have it complete by May or June of the financial year that fell in.
Cool, thank you. Councillor Van der Vis.
I understand that a couple of members here have received just very recently advice of a new waste management facility that is just coming online in South Canterbury, and was wondering whether this changes the number of options we have for sending stuff to Timaru, which comes up in this extremely late
Councillor, I think you seem to be talking about stuff that I believe we're going to cover in grey papers in the confidential section of the meeting, and I don't think that discussing that question in the public will be consistent with why we're going to confidential.
Pardon me, okay. What I want to ask, though, is in terms of this public waste minimisation and management plan committee forward work program, will we have the opportunity, and this is because of information I've just recently received about a new facility available in South Canterbury, will we have the opportunity to include this new landscape availability? Will we have the opportunity to add that to the review? I
think the fact is, we're not having a discussion on a confidential matter in the public part of the meeting, and we will be able to traverse that in the confidential section of the meeting. We will be able to traverse that in the confidential section of the meeting.
I understand that, but what the information I have is not confidential.
Councillor, please.
If I might, I think, Councillor Van der Vis, in order for staff to be able to provide appropriate responses to your question, which is linked to the non-public item, it would be better to ask it in non-public, and then, subject to the will of the meeting, we may then be able to move back into public and answer your question. But in the meantime, it is best. I have the same email that you do, I think received very recently, but that it is related to matters that are non-public at this point.
I'd just like to say that I haven't had any email on it. I've simply had a verbal that there is a new facility available in South Canterbury, and
Excuse me, through the chair, can we take a 5-minute recess at this point?
Let's make it 2. I move we have a 2-minute recess. Councillor Mayhem, all those in favour? Aye. If we can just get back to our seats.
I was going to raise it now, but leave it till later.
Yeah, because it's okay. Matters for the chair. I'll put it down there now. Very good. We're all back. I'll call the meeting back to order. So, Councillor Van der Zurel, is very happy with the discussion you've had with the Chief Executive?
yes, the Chief Executive has very satisfactorily explained why this needs to be dealt with at a later date.
Wonderful, thank you. I just have one last question. It's on page 28. It's Mosgiel Park and Ride. There's a commentary. I just can't find it right now because I left my notes at home. Oh, there it is. It's Mosgiel Park and Ride is included in the 10-year plan or 9-year plan, but then it goes on to say the ORC are revising fare structures and the likely cost of the park and ride are approximately $100,000. These aren't progress statements, so I'm wondering actually why they're in there and what does anybody who put that. It's been put in there by somebody, and I'm just wondering what's the purpose.
Councillor, apologies for that. That was just my attempt at trying to make a more fulsome commentary on the forward work program, which has obviously failed, so solid apologies for that.
Okay, so it's not like that's not a red flag coming up to say.
No, but I think probably with the park and ride, I just wanted to make everyone aware that, as we all know, there will be changes ahead for ORC with the current co-funding of public transport that we'll just need to work through with them in terms of the impact that might have on the Mosgiel service. So it was really just, it's not a red flag as so much, but more of a heads up that we have got our eye on that.
Okay, and then it's probably worthy to raise with the Mosgiel Community Board as well then, because affected people in Mosgiel will be quite affected by it. Thank you. If there's no more questions, I just want to touch on the major projects and just say it's still, this meeting's come quite quickly after the last meeting, so we haven't had a chance to work on that major project traffic light program, but we'll continue to work on that. Wonderful. Thank you. Then, Councillor Mahan.
This is just about the waste minimisation hearings. Just an observation regarding the hearings that happened the other day. There were a lot of delays with people coming over here to the council chamber because they were walking around the municipal building trying to find a way in. They went to eyesight, didn't really get much information. When you come in downstairs at the bottom of the gallery, there's not a sign either until you're outside the chamber doors. I just wondered if there was an opportunity, maybe on the exterior of the municipal chambers, to say that the council meetings and hearings are now on the 4th floor of the art gallery. And I had a senior member of the community ringing me last night, also confused about the meetings and why she was being told to go to the art gallery. So I just wonder, if we need some better signage.
And some temporary notices for the day so that people get directed in the right direction.
Thank you.
Cool. Any other questions? I'm going to move this before we vote, though, in case someone wants to speak on it. So I move that the committee notes the Infrastructure Services Forward Work Programme to a seconder. Councillor Gilbert. Does anybody wish to speak? No, good. Okay, then I put it. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Item 8, proposal to stop part of White Road in Waitati. Didn't know this was a property issue, but I take it everybody's read it. I don't think you need to comment on it. Any questions of staff? Councillor Lafiso.
Tēnā koe, Mr Chair, tēnā kōrua. Aroha mai, forgive my ignorance, but I'm just referring to the summary of considerations and looking at the Māori impact statement. So, given that there's no known impact for mana whenua from the proposal, can you please explain what the process is when roads such as this are within the Wāhi Tupuna areas, like Puraka Nui and Te Hikadora, sorry.
Through the chair, so with the specific process and that specific reference, there is no additional process step. It was mentioning it, I guess, to put it in context and make sure that it's not, there's nothing proposed that is inconsistent with that that what is in the district plan in terms of the Wāhi Tupuna. because that relates to landscape and earthworks values.
Again, sorry for my ignorance, but so when something like this road comes up, there is no reference to mana whenua in terms of potential sale or whatever.
That would be so. We have a range of information that we have access to. So if there was something identified, even a kind of at a preliminary stage, that would be, we would seek to get further information on that before proposing to move forward to this stage. So that would be from a range of sources of information. Yeah.
So just to be clear, there's no required expectation of the council to interface with mana whenua on this.
If I can, that's all right. If I can elaborate a little bit on this. When staff are preparing a piece of work like this, they will actively consider if there is impacts to mana whenua in the area. They'll consult a variety of information that we have on file to establish that, including our GIS with the markings of sacred sites. If that isn't the case, then they'll proceed in this manner and we'll go to public consultation, which would include advising people in the area, including mana whenua. If there was an indication that further consideration was needed, then we would absolutely reach out to mana whenua.
Just ask a question. So does someone like Okaha get made aware of these?
Not these, not at this level, no.
Might be something you want to consider going forward. Yeah. Is this to this item? Because otherwise there's someone ahead of you on the list.
It's just a question.
To this, to what? Yeah.
To this paper.
Oh, I meant to Councillor Fiso because we've got Councillor Mayhem and Mr. Mayor here. Councillor Mayhem.
I was just a little bit confused about the small gap between sections 1 and 2. I can't tell, is the small gap that very tiny slither in the middle there that is going to be left as part of the driveway to 20 Whites Road? So it's only that teeny tiny bit right in the middle of the diagram?
Yeah.
The road just runs in a straight line up towards Mopanui Ridgeline, and the part that's being stopped has never really been used as a road, is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
I just asked this because although the other part of Whites Road is unformed as from a community emergency response, that unformed section of road, which is a walking track, is available from the local farmer as an escape route for people in Doctors Point should they need to elevate and get out along the Mopanui Ridgeline there. So I just wanted to be clear that that other part of the road, even though it's a walking track at the moment, if needed, a four-wheel drive vehicle or a bulldozer or something could get through there in the future.
Section 1 and 2, what we're proposing to stop, doesn't touch that thoroughfare, if you like, the unformed road that you see down the left-hand side of the map, and it's not proposed to interfere with that at all. So it's just Section 1, then the little gap for the driveway for the people in White Road, and then Section 2, which is all currently amalgamated and used as part of the farm.
So the part that will stay is this big, long driveway to 20 Whites Road that comes in much further down.
Are you talking about the driveway for 20 White Road or the unformed legal road besides 16 White Road?
About 20 White Road. So their driveway is already there. There's two driveways, one to 20 and one to 26. Property that's 20 Whites Road must already have an arrangement with 26 to have that driveway there. Yeah. Yeah.
That's why the gap is being left. Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
So, just for the purpose of clarification, looking at the map, 26 White Road is currently farming and taking care of the land of this stopped road. And so the boundary between the two properties, 20 and 26, is, well, there's like a boundary for each on either side of that proposed road to be stopped. And so they're simply looking to purchase or stop the road and then get it valued and purchase that from the DCC because it's already in their farm. They're already farming it, using it, but they're just going to tidy that up. Is that a correct understanding of the situation?
That's correct. There's already a boundary wall which effectively fences in the land in the unformed road into number 26.
Boundary wall is already on what it might be the south side or the east side of that.
That's correct.
Councillor Benson Pope.
I'm just reading this. It triggered a consent that was heard by Commissioner Day Cleven a year or so ago, where there was an issue around gates on a road. This isn't the same issue.
It is not the same. No.
Councillor Garrett.
Just wanted to check in with you. My understanding is to get to this point with the report on the agenda, there's been an exhaustive process that has gone before this to get to this point. Is that correct?
There's been a significant amount of work at the preliminary stage, both by the applicant and internally. Yes.
Thank you.
Ms. McDonald.
Morena Korua. I'm wondering, regarding the Māori impact statement, and I'm wondering if there could be a process for saying that if they've been consulted, could it be put in there, so-and-so was consulted from Puketeraki, for instance, and then we'd know whether they've actually happened or not happened. It would be very helpful.
Absolutely.
We'll capture that at the end of matters consideration of the chair so it gets caught in the minutes. Cool. Any more questions? Okay, then. It's a pretty long one. Can we, yeah. I'll move to what comes up on the screen is what we'll move.
Good way to go. Happy to second.
Second to Councillor Walker. We haven't lost Donna though, right? We just lost her image on the screen. Yeah, good. We're still there, Donna. Okay, anybody wish to speak to this? No, then I'll put it that the committee approves everything up there, including parts 1 through 5. And that was moved, seconded by Councillor Walker. I'll put it. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Now item 9, amendment to road naming policy. Thank you very much. Do you wish to make any comments?
Just to say that this is an amendment to the road naming register component of the road naming policy to make it more efficient. At the moment, when we submit a road name to the road naming register, we'll bring a report to council, and then when a developer wants to use that name, we'll bring another report to ISCOM, and that creates delays for the application of the road name, and that means it's not a good incentive for developers to use more appropriate names. So this is a proposed simple amendment to the policy that would make the road name register more useful.
Yeah, I know. I'm just going to open up for questions in a second. So I note in the report that basically the developer really gets no particular temporal advantage because they still have to come back for the approval process, which is what you're trying to take up. Cool. Councillor Gary.
Thank you, and I've been around long enough to have seen the waxing and waning of the road naming policy and everything in between. My question to you is, have the developers, have you had any response just to this concept, the proposal that's before us, from any response from the developers?
Not specifically, but in the past when we've spoken to developers and suggested using names through road naming policy, and they see that there's delays and they still have to wait for a future ISCOM, they've opted to put their own names forward instead.
Right. So you see this as obviously as a positive move in terms of short-stopping that. Thank you.
Perhaps even as much as so do you see it as it'll be more likely that the names will get used if we have this policy changed?
I would hope so, and it also means we can put time into the road name register and promote it more and look at the website and make it a much more user-friendly experience for developers.
Great, thanks. Councillor Gilbert.
Thank you. My question is just around point number 7. In some instances, the names are only appropriate for certain localities in the city. I'm just trying to figure out, and this may be a little bit too early in the process to know how it's going to play out, but is it likely to be a table and asterisk as to what areas it is, or is it more likely to be a database where you're searching the area and then you come up with all the names, including the ones suitable specifically for that locality?
So at the moment on the road name register it says what location it's appropriate for. In the future we might change how that operates, so you'll be able to see whether it's appropriate for all of Dunedin or just for specific areas.
Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Chair. Kia ora. Just want to ask a question on paragraph 15, and it just talks about the work with the community boards on the register. So I was just a little bit confused when it said about the name being used in a community board area, that staff would still check that the name's supported by the relevant board. So I'm just wondering when that happens, if it happens when all of the street name registers being put together, or if someone chooses it, then do they have to go back to the community board? Because this is supposed to be slowing down in time, so would they be pre-approved by the community board?
It would depend what the road name was when it was put onto the register. Sometimes we go to the community board straight away, and some are only appropriate for certain regions or certain areas. Going forward, we'd probably try and be more consultative with community boards so that when we put them into onto the register, we'd know how they're best utilised. But in the interim, we'd have to go back to seek the support of the community board. But usually there are no issues with that. They usually prefer names to come off the road name register, to be honest.
Oh, yeah, I'm just asking about that because this is supposed to be a faster process. So if the community board's in there, then it might, and they meet every 6 weeks or so, it might just slow it down. So just wondering if they will get pre-approved for use or not in an area.
What we would recommend is for developers at some points to actually engage with community boards directly, and that will generally speed things up.
Councillor Garrett.
Yes, paragraph 16, and obviously we don't want a more complex process and it slows everything down. You want it to be a slick process, but and put the resources into maintaining the list. I see real benefit in that, promoting the list. But paragraph 16, it doesn't say, but I'm assuming, once it's used, does the name come off the list, or does it sort of sit separately with the address?
At the moment it sits on the list but as being unavailable, so people can see what's been chosen.
Oh, I see.
Lucas.
Thank you. It's almost similar to Councillor Barker's question, except it's in relation to mana whenua, because it says in the policy that we'll consult with mana whenua before the name's used. So how does that fit in the process? Is it similar to consulting with the community board, or where do they fit in the process?
Anytime we put a name that's important for mana whenua onto the list, we consult at the time it goes onto the list, and we get pretty clear direction about where and when it's appropriate to be used.
So in that case, so it says on the list that it's only appropriate to be used in this area. I mean, that's really my point.
Would say that if that's what the discussion led to.
And I have this question that sort of follows along the same line. In the next item, we've got a list of names that are sitting there, and there's some people with some very high mana on that list. And I'm just looking at one, Te Rangi Hiro or Sir Peter Buck, who probably was one of the most influential people in terms of our understanding of anthropology and other such things. It'd be a shame to see him put on a cul-de-sac. And I mean that quite literally. Presumably roads have mana, and these names would go with the mana of the road. How do we capture that? Because this is going to be a developer just picks that name, and it's a really, really big name, and they like it, but the actual road's tiny, and it doesn't reflect.
Yeah, that's part of the staff assessment to make sure that the use of it is appropriate. So that would be a discussion we'd have with the developer, and something we consider when we add the name to the road naming register.
Okay, so there's a certain level of protection in there. Okay, good, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Lofisa.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Chair, tēnā korua. This is random and sort of not directly related, but in terms of renaming, say for example, whomever around this table maybe, we decided to rename Taieri, anything with Taieri or road, back to its proper name, Taiari. What would that be high significance in terms of?
Yes, it is. There is a process in the road naming policy for renaming a road, but because it has impact on Google and maps and sort of long-term use, it is quite complicated, and we only tend to do it in significant circumstances.
And actually, follow up, Councillor Lofisa, does that ends up being a process with Land Information New Zealand, doesn't it? If you start changing the spelling of the names.
Yeah, it's quite a complicated process, and there is quite a large amount of consultation for larger roads that's required.
Cool, thank you. Any more questions?
Happy to move.
And then, yes, Councillor Gary wishes to move it. Do I have a seconder? I'll second it. Do you wish to speak?
Yes, I do, just briefly. As I said in the questions, I've been here long enough to see the complications and waxing and waning of the road naming policy, and it is my opinion that we spend far too long talking about this, and staff, a lot of staff resource goes into developing these reports. I'm not saying that the naming of roads is not important, not at all, but I do think this report addresses a better use of resources and energy going into amplifying and adding to the road naming register, because that's been a long held concern of mine and others, that we need to do better in terms of the names we have on there, and we're coming to that in the next item. And we've certainly seen some movement in there in terms of names significant to mana whenua, the more diversity in terms of more women's names on the list, and we need more diversity overall. And so this is a step in the right direction. It's a better use of staff resource and more efficient for our developers. And I know people in the community find our processes frustrating at the best of times, but I'm sure there's a level of frustration with developers in terms of the delay. And as the process goes at the moment, that is just as it is. So I welcome this report, commend the staff for bringing it to us as a way forward, and do hope that this passes and we get on with it and we don't see this back again anytime soon, so that we can focus on other bigger issues. Thank you.
Any other speakers? Then I'll put it. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Now on to item 10, which is closely related, new names for the road name register. Mr. Spears, do you have any few words?
Just this is a range of new names for the road name register. Some of them are flora and fauna names that go back to a resolution from ISCOM in 2017, but we've corrected some spellings. And there's also some women's names for the road naming register where we've done quite a lot of research and archives work, so it's taken a little bit of time. Some of the names still have, not the ones we're proposing to add, but we could potentially have some more research to be done, but because it's quite intensive. So for example, Jean Burt, we're not putting onto the road naming register because there's already a Burt Street. But to establish if that's named after her or her father takes quite a lot of work, for example. So we thought rather than carrying on doing the research, we'd bring the names forward and we can move forward.
Cool, thank you. Councillor Benson-Pope.
Thank you. I thought this was a really interesting read, actually, and I was triggered by number 27, which is a reference to Joyce Hurd, one of our former colleagues, because I think you need to add her husband as well. This might be a family package. But Eric William was professor at the university, Pro-Vice Chancellor, and also a City Councillor. So you have a look at adding him to the list, I think, please.
So actually, to follow up the councillor's question, I've got Keith Parks on my list here. So how do we...
So am I half.
We throw more names into the register if we want to.
We encourage people to actually look at the process and do a bit of research, and then send us a bit of information about the people, and then we'll take it from there.
And how do they do that?
I can send some information out after the meeting, but there's an email address that can be used.
Thank you. Councillor Gary.
Yes, look, I welcome this, and I'd like to signal that I'd like to move this when the time comes. This is great to see such a variety, and I'd ask that you look at, because I've noticed when I did a bit of delving that there's not much in the council archives on some of the former mayoresses of the city over time. That's something that's a little missing from the list, but a great list, and really commend you on the work you've done since we asked you to do this, and there's certainly a lot more variety there. So looking forward to seeing this added to now in the way. What promotion would you see happening with this to amplify the register?
Once the adoption of the new road naming register process is put through council, so we adopt it, we take it to council, get it approved, we'll look at the road naming register and how we can tweak it to actually be easier to use for developers, and then we'd probably put some communications out around that.
So how often would you bring it for confirmation to council?
We would only bring the individual names for confirmation, but once we've got a new look register, we'd probably present that to Wiscom just so you can see how it operates.
Would you bring it as a package, this number of names together, and rather than one at a time? That would seem...
From a staff point of view, it's better to add them one at a time, because as we get the information coming through, if we get a few at a time, we'll do them together, because we have to try and contact families and do the research sometimes, so it can be quite a time-consuming process.
Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Chair. Just wondering if there's a way of making the process of submitting and checking names a bit faster. I submitted 11 names in 2022, and I see that 7 of those are just been approved in here, and I did a lot of research before I submitted them. So is there a way that the process can be made faster? There's obviously a lot of people around the room who've got ideas. Is there a way of speeding up these naming suggestions?
I think you'll find it will go faster in the future with the new road naming register process. I do think there were delays. We had some staff shortages during this time, and there was a lot of research, and we had to put out media statements, and we had to contact families and get the information back. Some of those names we still haven't finished the archives research for, so we'll probably in the future move some of the names forward first to get some progress.
Councillor Gilbert.
Thank you. I'm actually turning to the names that have been deemed as not inappropriate, unsuitable. And I'm just trying to understand, I guess the question is, how long a period are we allowing here? So we've got Nail or Love, for example, not allowing Naylor, because Nail or Love actually is a company that still exists. I'm not sure that there's confusion, particularly given Mr. Naylor passed away in 1957. Same thing with Fletcher, passed away in 1974. Charles Spate died in 1928, and yes, Spates, I accept that Spates is a business, but you're not likely to confuse the two. And the weirdest one for me was H.D. Skinner, because there's an annex in Otago Museum, seems to be the reason that, Google Maps is normally fairly good. It's not likely to confuse Skinner Place with Skinner Annex. So I'm just trying to figure out what is required, from the time somebody has contributed so substantially as many of these have to the city and the region and passed on, what sort of gap is needed, or if their name is so significant, such as Spate is not likely to disappear anytime soon.
I think it's a good question. I think we have to look at it and come back to you on it. I think there's probably quite a strict interpretation of the policy, and I think we could probably be more flexible with those kind of names.
It's Benson Pope.
In the spirit of flexibility, I'm wondering about the prohibition on Christian names, first names. And I'm thinking of Ethel Benjamin Place, for example, where recognising a very significant early academic is appropriate with the full name. And I think there might be occasions where we probably need to be a bit more flexible around that as well. So could you consider putting some more thought into that? I mean, there are some times where Hone Tūwhare might be a good example, where it's more appropriate to use a whole name than just a surname.
Yeah, we agree. If you look at the names on the list, Harriet Morrison, for example, there's already a Morrison Street, so we couldn't use just Morrison. We'd have to use the full name. One thing we do have to be careful of is for short streets, long names cause cartography issues. And so, there are times when a full name's definitely not going to be appropriate, but we're open to any name that's 15 characters or less, including spaces.
So I have to observe that Ethel Benjamin Place is an awfully short street with a very long name.
Councillor Van der Vis.
You've obviously had to spend a lot of time researching the history of some of these names. What happens if a name is chosen and the history's been researched and it all seems fine and dandy, but new information comes to light and the person involved has done something completely and utterly heinous that becomes public? What then do you do about the name of an existing road once it's already been in use for some time?
Hopefully we wouldn't miss that, but if it does come out, we'd look at the road renaming policy and we'd bring it back to ISCOM potentially to consider, we'd do a consultation and consider whether that name was still appropriate for a road in Dunedin.
Like Dundas Street in association with slavery. That's just a matter of fact. I mean, any more questions? Councillor Mayhem.
Why is there no Māori woman on the list? Is it because no one has submitted names?
Correct.
So one of the take-homes is if you want to see that list more broadened and more to your appeal, it's really up to you to put the names in.
The purpose of the policy is to get the community putting forward people that they are aware of who have contributed to Dunedin. It's not really designed for staff to be researching. We welcome people to submit.
Very good. Any more questions? Councillor Macon.
So what about a name like Blueskin, where it's the Pākehā nickname of a prominent chief of the region? Is the name appropriate today to still be so broadly in use?
I can't comment on that at the moment. Sorry, I haven't considered it.
But it would be looked through that lens, would it not? And particularly in that one, mana whenua would definitely be asked. Right, I assume? Yep. No, I mean, they are already being asked. So, I mean, that's where it would probably get caught, captured, not caught. Any more questions? Gary wishes to move the motion.
We need to get a second.
And Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I welcome this name register, and I thank the staff for their work to date. It goes with the resolution, the motion's just passed to a resolution, and it relies on the community to come forward with names. I was interested to hear the comment around first and last names, because I rail against the very male-orientated use, particularly in boys' schools, and having been a teacher, I'm very aware of this, of using surnames only to refer to men. And so I rail against that when we're referring to people. However, I do take Mr. Spear's point about the cartography issues that relate to that. This is a call of action to the community. The list that's here is certainly an improvement on what we've had before. It's more diverse, but we have a ways to go yet. And what we have been asking for is diversity in terms of gender, diversity in terms of ethnicity, and particularly making sure that mana whenua names are front and centre. And we're on the journey. So I ask the community, including community boards and the community generally, to submit names of people that they feel should be reflected in our city, and to reflect our current city in 2025, which is an extraordinarily diverse city. I trust the staff to do the work and to do the research, and I really welcome this and the previous resolution to move this forward in the direction that we've been asking for. And I know that it's come down to staff resource, but this is a really positive mood, and I'm already thinking about some of the names that I might put forward, do some research on and put forward to staff to consider. I know that they will take into account all of the matters that they need to in terms of this. It's not a simple matter. I think we all know that from our years of dealing with road naming. It's not as simple as it looks, folks, and but we'll certainly get a better result from having these options. And I look forward to seeing how our developers choose. I think the choices will be a whole lot more appropriate than perhaps some that we've seen to date.
Any other speakers? Councillor Barker.
As I asked in questions, I submitted 11 names 3 years ago, and I did a lot of research on all of the people that I submitted names for, and I encourage, I think we've talked about this in every meeting, encouraging people to submit names, and it creates, I guess, less work for the staff if we actually do that research ourselves, and we are asked to do that as part of the street naming process. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the women's names that are on there. There was Eileen Soper, who was a lady editor of the Otago Daily Times, and she looked after, we're probably all a bit old to remember Dot of Dot's Little Folk, and then produced 5 books. And there's Rachelina Armitage, who was the daughter of William Downey Stewart and became the first New Zealand woman to complete a degree at Oxford. We have Rachel Reynolds, who was the president of the Dunedin Free Kindergarten Association, who also set up a 6 penny clothing club to which subscribers donated 6 pennies a month in material to make clothing for poor families. She also took part in the agitation of 1889 against sweated labour conditions in Dunedin. Carolyn Freeman, University of Otago's first female graduate and a passionate pioneer in education, and she, I went to Columba College, and she was the person that set up Girton College, and I was a member of Girton as well, so very proud of that one. And Laura Hayward, who got a Belgian Legion of Honour medal in 1916, and that was for her work with refugees in Dunedin during World War I. Mary Ann Welborn, who was apparently the first woman to go to the Gabriel's Gully Gold Rush, where she did not see another woman for 3 months. And then Margaret Cruikshank, who was the first New Zealand woman to register as a doctor and subsequently engage in medical practice. And I just wanted to take this time to acknowledge these women because they will go on the street name register, but it's very important for us to think about the amazing Dunedin women that are ending up as, I shouldn't say ending up as street names, but ending up to be acknowledged. And I completely take on board what Councillor O'Malley talked about the mana of names as well. And I think we need to think about we've tried to simplify the process, but we also need to make sure that the mana of those names is recognised when they go on. So I'm pleased after 3 years of waiting to finally be able to approve the inclusion, well, if everyone votes for it, of the notable woman of Dunedin onto the naming register. And I encourage councillors who've come up with ideas to do their research and to submit those names to the naming register, and everyone else as well.
Councillor Houlihan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'd like to support what the last two speakers said. As a woman, I think it's great that there are more women being put on this list because, as they've all mentioned previously, there's not many women who are actually noted or named on road signs in our city. And I'd go as far as to say, probably, I'm making a presumption here, but I think that's probably the same throughout the rest of the country as well. So I would urge the public as well to come forward with people's names, particularly women or minority and people who perhaps wouldn't get acknowledgement, and put their names forward. If they've done something significant in our city, they should be recognised, and it's a lovely way to do it. Thank you.
Any more speakers? Yeah, I'm going to pull two names off this register I think are quite remarkable. The first one I've already mentioned was Te Rangihira, Sir Peter Buck, and it's interesting that his biography here doesn't capture the role he played in anthropology and our understanding of Pacific culture that he really brought forward in the early 1900s when others weren't championing that thing. And then the other one is Arnold Nordmeyer, which maybe you may or may not know of in politics, but probably one of the most influential members of the 1930s Labour government. And I will be adding another name, which is Keith Parks, which, if anybody has any understanding of military history, will know that he led the defence of the Battle of Britain. And it is generally put down to the fact that Keith Parks was the reason the Battle of Britain was won. And he is an Otago Boys High School graduate. Okay. It's been put, hasn't it? It's been, so we'll put it. Oh, you're right of reply.
Right of reply, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Councillor Barker, for highlighting the woman that you did. And I was particularly pleased to see Marion Hatton on there, a New Zealand suffragette. It's great to see women identified in this list. And you're right, Councillor Barker. For too long, women in our society have not been acknowledged, and that was a particular period of history, and we're trying to do something about that. I was also really pleased to see Hardwick Knight there, who lived in Broad Bay, where I live, and was the director of the medical photographic unit of the Otago Medical School. But the photographs that Hardwick Knight took a really important historical record of this city, extraordinary record, and so such a wealth of history amongst these names. I wish the staff well in this work, and thank you for the work you've done to date to get to this point.
I'll put it. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Item 11, Three Waters Activity Report for the period ending 28th of February 2025. Gentlemen. Do you wish to make any comments?
Kia ora, Mr. Chair. Yes, if I may, please. Firstly, I'd like to just acknowledge the work of the team, and hopefully you get a sense of the breadth of activities that have been undertaken by Three Waters, and particularly during this period. Also, and I think it's on page 92, we describe the reform activities, and also, like, if I may, please, to acknowledge the work of various contributors to that. So, Mr. McAndrew, Mr. Oliver, particular, but legal team or finance team or comms team are all contributing to this very significant body of work at this time, and you'll be aware of that from our various discussions and so on. So I just wanted to pause and acknowledge that, if I may, please. And then lastly, it's only a small point, but again, it's come up in conversations a number of times. So item 62, also on page 92. Talk about condition assessment. So trying to give you a sense here of the complexity involved in undertaking condition assessments of live assets. So, that's come up a conversation a few times, but hopefully that small commentary just gives you a sense of why it's complex and why it's time consuming. So, thank you.
Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the substantial report, very detailed. My question is number point 60, and I think it's bullet point 3 around the contract to Tahuna Waste Treatment Plant and the ultraviolet disinfection system. It talks about introducing a new supplier, and that you're quite glowing about this new supplier. Can you just expand as to why?
Kia ora, Councillor. Yeah, it's a good question. More so the fact that we're bringing there's some complexity to operating ultraviolet disinfection plants, and we think we're bringing a lot of knowledge and expertise to the country that we haven't previously had here, which should help us to run the process more efficiently. And there's some financial benefits to that. There's general operational efficiency benefits, compliance benefits, but there's also some quite big kind of staff well-being benefits to it. Operating a UV system isn't a particularly fun job. You pull in lamps, which might look like tube lights, out of wastewater and cleaning them, and we currently do that every single day. And so we're hoping to reduce the level of labour intensity that we have in that process.
Can you name who it is, or is it commercially sensitive at the moment? I mean, doesn't really matter to me, but
I'm not 100% sure if the contract's been signed yet, so I can't.
Councillor Barker.
Question on page 85, and it's paragraph 45 about the bioresources, and it talks about the open tender process for the long-term biosolids research. And is this about sludge? So given that we have put some money in the long-term plan, is that about finding a contract to use the money on, basically, or a solution to? Is it about building investigating a solution or building the solution?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. It covers both. However, we're still working through the detail of what that would look like. So we're working with the preferred supplier currently to come to some agreement around how we stage that, and at what stage we would have different gateways and seek different approvals within DCC.
So we put a third of the amount that would in the long-term plan, but we haven't put 100% of the amount in, shall we say? How am I going to ask this? Because we're going up to the long-term plan budget process, is it more efficient? Would it possibly be more efficient if we put the whole sum of money in? I guess we'll be asking that during the long-term plan process if people come back, because it's a zero carbon thing. I don't know if it's time and place to ask this.
Kia ora, Councillor. I think I understand your question. It's a balance. We want to come to you with a robust solution that's scalable. There are many technologies on offer. Again, it's a suitability for what we want here in Ōtepoti Dunedin, but in a scalable way. So we're viewing it pragmatically. If it's Council's decision and ratified through consultation that the full amount is made available, we'll still look to ensure that there's value for money being presented through that. Equally, if it's a third of what we believe is required, we'll work with that and provide something that can expand progressively over time once we've proven the value for money proposition.
So would we have more information before the LTB, before we're making decisions on budget around this, or are we good to go with what we've got? I know it's a complex, difficult.
Yeah, I think we're good to go with what we've got and where we are, particularly with those market conversations.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, the ISP, the integrated system planning. I'm wondering if you could just speak to that a little bit, because there's quite a significant piece of work in integrating all of the the Three Waters facilities across the city. So just for people's understanding, could you just explain what's happening in that program? Because we see some outcomes coming from it. But
I'll start and then I'll hand over to Mr. Oliver, if I may, please. So the body of work is nationally significant. It's once again Dunedin showing leadership in Three Waters thinking. The programme is a comprehensive review of the future state of all of our assets, so we have to extrapolate out and have a design horizon some 50 years into the future. And then in that, we're having to grapple with many unknowns, but as we've discussed through the South Dunedin Futures programme, we have to pick a pathway to a future state. Back in 2010, Dunedin was seen as a thought leader in Three Waters strategy, with the Three Waters strategy that was created at that time. This in part is a next evolution of that thinking at a technical level, but it will set us up well for making sure we've got security of supply all the way through to receiving and treating kindly to the environment and to our communities and to Mana Whenua wastewater, both solid form, sludge, or liquid form. So that's the sort of the grand statement. In terms of some detail, Mr. Oliver, is there anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, I'd just like to add, just in terms of a progress update, so we've compiled a detailed report that summarises the whole body of work, and we're just in the process of producing what we call a high-level summary report, which is more like around 25 pages and more for a broader general public audience. But where we're wanting to get to and where we're about to step into, as per paragraph 20 in our report, is getting into those next steps. So we want to start heading down this core pathway and start looking into some of those unknowns that will inform the early projects. But the great thing is, in terms of our 9-year plan, we've that's been heavily informed by the ISP work over the last few years. So a lot of the things, the projects, like the bioresources we discussed earlier, that you see in there have been informed by the ISP.
And another subsidiary question in line with that is that one of the things that we've got is good disinfection of water coming into the system. So we have UV treatment of all the fresh water coming into the system, but we also have disinfection of the wastewater that goes out of our system. Is that typical across New Zealand? Because I know that there were many territorial authorities that had to scramble to get UV installed on their incoming water for fresh water. But it's not my observation that disinfection of the wastewater is actually carried out in many places. My point being, it seems to me we're well ahead of the game. But can you speak to that, please?
It's not unusual for large metropolitan areas to use that as a recognised treatment process, primary, secondary, tertiary processes. So that's it's not an unusual thing to see for large population metropolitan areas to have as part of their treatment process. Outgoing as part of the wastewater treatment process before discharge to the discharge location.
Councillor Lucas.
Thank you. If you just clarify for me on page 88 on talking about interim watercourse management approach, and on point 33 you talk about the watercourse program funded temporarily from the Three Waters stormwater budgets, and I'm thinking that's back in 2019. And then I read what you're doing in Bar Street, blah, 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 and then on with the future watercourse program, and I understand what's happening in terms of the local water dumb well program. So I guess what I'm trying to get my head around is, are we still only temporarily funding watercourse work? Or I'm just trying to get my head around what we're doing in that space.
Kia ora, Deputy Mayor. So we have budget funding, and we are seeking further ongoing budget funding for stormwater activities, and within that there will be a mix of the stormwater renewals programme growth aspects for the publicly owned assets. That's carrying on. It's as and when privately owned assets emerge as being problematic, and council having a desire to assist with those particular issues. That's again a trade-off and a balance. So it's just not specific funding for those private activities, but drawing down on the body of money available for the public assets, and then having to balance that further out over time. So I think that's what the earlier work recognised. There was an issue, and it's been tackled temporarily. And what we're saying is, well, the future watercourse management approach would herald the new era of how that is tackled holistically.
And also where there may potentially be, I mean, I guess you probably already know where there's issues with particular private watercourses, and so that will be picked up in that. So no, that's exactly what I thought. Thank you.
Before we move on to the next set of questions, I want to follow up on that because mine were around that as well. I think the term watercourse is somewhat confusing because people tend to think as an open drain as that, whereas in fact most of our watercourses in the urban area are actually reticulated pipes, right? And you have corrected it in here, but I don't know if the public was quite onto it just yet. What percentage of the reticulated stormwater system do you believe we are using as part of the city system that is sitting on private title and private land in the urban area, roughly?
In terms of that council is using as drainage network, we wouldn't have that number to hand, but we do have an understanding of the quantity of private watercourses in private property, essentially. Yeah.
And if I may add, Mr. Chair, I think to add to Mr. Oliver's explanation, is that some of it is the watercourse, privately owned watercourse components may receive flow directly or indirectly through secondary flow paths, and that's where you get a level of complexity as to the functional use of a private asset for a more wider community benefit.
Which is point 38 in the report, which is the the future ownership and management of private watercourses. It's my impression, and we haven't really been ever given a fully in-depth analysis of this, that percentage of private watercourse systems that we use that actually do receive water from the city-owned municipal system and then traverse through it and may even go back into the city-owned is quite large, is it not? It could be at least 30%.
I'd hesitate to give a figure for May, please. But we understand the significance. I think it's reflective of how the city has grown progressively over time, and historically the city's role in assisting with some of those earlier schemes, which then were transferred over to either private ownership or the city may have implemented on behalf of the private owner at that time, and so ownership has remained private, but there's been a contribution from the drainage board at the time, some number of decades ago.
So it's a legacy issue of ownership and management.
Essentially.
Yep, thank you. Councillor Mayhem.
Thanks. Page 46, page 89, number 46, the abatement notices that were issued for Warrington and Waikouite's discharge to land under regulatory performance. It says that process improvements delivered at both plants meant that those abatement notices were cancelled. Could you elaborate a little bit on what those improvements were?
For Warrington, we had an abatement notice related to the total nitrogen concentration in the effluent, and we built a new piece of equipment called a moving bed biofilm reactor on an MBBR, which is basically a tank which houses some bugs that are feeding on the nitrogen to reduce the nitrogen levels. We did that in a relatively innovative way, and that was really successful, and our nitrogen levels dropped, give or take, as soon as we had turned it on. So that was a kind of end-of-pipe technology solution, or end-of-plant technology solution, which is very effective. For Waikouite, we considered the same option. The abatement notes related to ammonia there rather than total nitrogen, so the solution would have been slightly different. However, we found we were actually able to optimise the existing plant by modifying the levels in the pond to achieve the same outcome. So we avoided any capital expenditure and did it with operational modifications only.
So does that mean you added something into the pond to minimise the ammonia?
No, there's 2 ponds which run in series, and by modifying the levels of the ponds, we were able to improve the ammonia removal.
I see the improvement on ongoing actions, next steps, improvement actions to ensure compliance. So there's going to be work that still needs to be done at both of those plants because they're at the end of life, is that right? Sorry, just, next steps, right at the end.
Yeah, that wasn't necessarily specifically relating to Warrington and Waikawaiti. There's other plants where compliance improvement is required, but that said, we will have ongoing work to ensure that Warrington and Waikawaiti both continue to comply, and we are also in the midst of a consenting process for Warrington currently, and we're also working on the longer term plan as part of the Northern Schemes project for the longer term future of both of those plants.
And also item 20, alternative water sources investigations haven't started yet. I just wondered if there was an indication of when we might start looking at groundwater sources.
We're looking to get that moving probably mid-2025 or around that time. Yep, going and getting a consultant to help us with that, which initially will probably be mostly desktop-based work before we move to some field investigations.
And then come back to us and report on this?
Yeah, as we've laid out here, these things will progressively be reported on through these reports.
Horizon for water bores, let's say, in the north coast is about 10 to 15 years away. Yep. Councillor Gilbert.
Thank you. My question is all around the 62, and Mr. Ward, you touched on it, the condition assessment. I was intrigued, first of all, that sonar gets used, and obviously it's another one of those things. Most of what I know about sonar I've learnt from Hunting Red October and movies. But I'm trying to understand how, first of all, how sonar is used. Is it detecting ovality of the pipes? Is it detecting blockage? How often do we do it? Is it equipment we own? All those sorts of things. Is it kind of like a pill that runs through the system, taking photos, looking for defects? But the biggest question of that is, how often do we use it, or need to use it, or should we be using it? And is it equipment that we own?
I'll double check. I don't believe we do own the equipment. It's very unlikely we would. It's very specialist, and therefore we don't use it very often. Hence, this is a novel use of that technology. And once again, we're learning and we're applying those learnings to other similar assets. What we're talking about here is large diameter, live wastewater pressurized assets. If we turn them off, we essentially have to ask the good residents upstream to not use their facilities for maybe several days. So not wishing to do that, we have to work in a live environment and then isolate them for the shortest possible time. Some of it we'll do whilst the pipe is live. That could well be the use of the sonar, the component. But once we get into the pipe, we have to check its health and what has been degraded, and that's when you use the laser profiling, for example. So there's a variety of techniques. I appreciate I'm not giving you a fulsome answer as to the use of sonar. I don't know if my colleagues are able to answer that. If not, I'll come back to you if I may, please. But what we're trying to articulate is there's many techniques required to check the health and the associated performance of these complex assets.
Yeah, and to add, the only bit I would add is in order to do this, they floated a piece of equipment which we don't own down the pipeline, but needed to undertake some kind of complex arrangements to allow that to happen, kind of circular pumping. And then this piece of equipment is using the different analytical techniques to try and see what's the outside diameter of the pipe, what's the inside diameter of the pipe, and is there any build-up on the inside of the pipe as well. So it's using the multiple techniques to profile that, and then will give us an output which will tell us as the pipe corroded, how thick are the pipe walls, is the material we need to remove from the inside walls of the pipe, and is it feasible to line the pipe to extend its life.
And again, because it's a conversation we enjoy having, as you can probably tell, but it's really, again, to earlier conversations, what we're trying to articulate is also that we're looking to extend the life of assets where it's practicable to do so, rather than replace them at the end of their design or book life.
Mr. Mayor.
Item 17, Waikoiri Water Treatment Plant. You're putting in a pond there, and there are several enclosed reservoir tanks. So what's going to be the function of that pond?
When we produce water, we're pumping up raw water from the river and filtering it to remove contaminants, including bits of sediment and the like. The backwash material, the material that doesn't end up in the drinking water, we put through a process called a tube settler to recover additional water from it, but ultimately we end up with a kind of sludge waste which we need to discharge. That sludge is stored in ponds, so it's basically a waste product pond, and then the overflow from that returns to the river. So the plant actually has, as well as having a consent to take clean water from the river, all of our water treatment plants have a discharge from the plant as well, and those ponds are storing that waste.
Obviously, in a pond, it's much easier to clean out than out of the tank. Yes, that's all. Thank you.
Any more questions? Councillor Mayhem.
So just following on from that question, so that's a discharge back to the water, not a discharge to the land?
It's via land, so I'd have to check the technicality of what in the consent, but I think it is actually a discharge to land. So previously we discharged through a series of kind of wetlands and ponds. We've actually just reconstructed a new discharge which has a whole kind of land application area which has all been planted, and recently we received the consent update for the new discharge, and that's recently been put into operation. So I think it is it technically a land discharge? It certainly discharges onto land before, but ultimately would end up in the river.
But just to confirm, it's from the water treatment plant, not wastewater ponds. Yeah, so it's a different settling pond, a different material in it than from a wastewater plant. Any more questions? They've been very thorough, so I put it then that the committee notes the Three Waters activity report for the period 1st of October 24 to 20th of February 25, seconded Councillor Weatherall. Does anybody wish to speak to it? Mr. Mayor.
Just that. It's a really excellent paper, thank you, gentlemen. And what it illustrates is the broad spectrum of work that is done by the Three Waters team. And the Three Waters department, being our largest department, does a heck of a lot of work around the city. And so this is largely BAU, but this is the reason why we don't have, lots of problems in the water system, because all of this work is happening on an ongoing basis. So well done everyone for keeping the city's water, waste, storm and fresh water under control, and constantly come out with new things to improve the situation.
Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks to the team for this incredible report. Very fulsome and substantial, and I think it's testament to, or a reminder to the public when they look at the amount of rates, money and debt we take on related to this, where it goes, and this speaks volumes to that. I just want to talk very briefly, though, to just a couple of the pipe network renewals that are ongoing, and just want to congratulate the team both on the Bath Street work, which looked as if it was akin to doing surgery on a bowl of spaghetti. So well done to everybody involved in getting that corrected and up to spec, and also I want to thank the business owners down there who tolerated the work, and again, well done to the team for having those upfront discussions with the people who live and work down there. Also, I want to pay homage to the work that's currently going on that I pass every day in Roseneath, actually. I think it's Downer who are doing the pipe renewal resilience work there. I just want to say that the team there are extremely cooperative and friendly with the users of the shared path, and they work really hard to make sure that everybody has access there while they do what is, and I can see it, is extensive and complicated work. So I just wanted to pass on that those thanks from the wider community for the way the teams not only do work, but how they appreciate and make sure that the public don't get too disadvantaged by that. So well done to all and sundry.
Councillor Mayhem.
Thank you. Just following on from the two previous speakers, I too would like to express my thanks. I find it very useful in my own mind to have had the full tour of the different treatment plants around the city. So when we talk about things like the ultraviolet treatment, I have a picture in my mind's eye of exactly what that looks like, having visited the plant, and also been able to see the live dramatic city weather issues play out on the SCADA data, and just understanding how all of the amazing technology available is being utilised by the Three Waters team. I also would like to extend thanks from the West Harbour Community Board for the presentation that the gentleman came to the Harbour Board, the West Harbour Community Board, explaining exactly the situation for Port Chalmers and the safety improvements that have been made with regard to the loss of water over the October weather event. And I just want to also acknowledge all of the renewals that have happened with the pumping stations, wastewater treatment plants, the water treatment plant renewals, and also the plans for the foreseeable future. The public really need to have a wee look at this report, or I hope that this will be really covered off in our long-term plan consultation, because it's this huge body of work around Three Waters that is, and I think it's in our consultation documents that come out, that every $100 spent of ratepayer money, $31 is solely for our Three Waters program, and it's a big chunk of what keeps the city ticking. So full credit to Mr. Ward and his wonderful team, because you're doing an amazing job. Thank you so much.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Often the community only sees disruption and isolation and the money spent on such projects. And then there's those who, for example, what's covered off in the report under private watercourses, in particular paragraph 28, around the property owner's responsibilities. Sometimes the public only find out how we interact with the watercourses on their property when there is an issue, and a major one at that. And sometimes that can be really quite a shock. So often our community interacts in a negative way in the Three Waters space. However, fortunately, they're able to flush the toilet and turn on the tap and so forth, but we take all that for granted, don't we? But we are extremely fortunate, and this report speaks to the complexity of Three Waters projects, the impactful work that is being done that often goes under the radar unless there's that disruption that I talked about. And it is great to see this listed as it is. It is a work in progress. We're not there by any stretch of the imagination. There's a lot of work yet to do, but we are definitely on the way, and this report speaks to that. I want to acknowledge the expertise, the current expertise. I know we have a lot of experts in our community, and that local knowledge is valuable, but I want to tip my hat to the expertise and current knowledge of our staff in this space, and their knowledge of best practice, current best practice, is so important as we do this work. So thank you to them.
Any more speakers? then I'll use my right of reply, which I always forget to give first speech when I move something. This is another really good, robust activity report, and I think I agree with Councillor Mayhem. This is the kind of thing that the public should look at and actually regard, because you can see that there is an enormous amount of work going on here. And you can also see not only is there a lot of work going on here, but the delivery is exceptional. Pretty much coming in on time and on budget. And it reflects, in fact, the decision that this council made in the last 3 or 4 years to put the appropriate amount of money into the operational running of Three Waters. And the team has responded by taking that resource and using it effectively for the city. And you can sense it in the city that the infrastructure is starting to come back. And things like the compliance of the wastewater treatment plants on the north coast, that was an incredible piece of retrofitting and bringing that engineering in there and bringing us straight back into line again with our new regulator and the new regulations that we face. So it's a changing world for Three Waters delivery. I think that this team in this city could be, as we see with the work they're doing with Te Mata Arawai, is one of the leading teams in the country now. And I think if we keep backing them, they will continue to keep performing. And there's a great relationship between operations and and oversight and through these two, through us and the committee. And the 30% of rates, that is the standard expectation you should have of a municipal area, that Three Waters will consume about 30% of your rates take. And that's why it's the one place before the regulator existed where councils would have a tendency to underspend, because you could have nice little effects on your short-term rates by just underspending. But you cannot ignore the fact that basically 1/3 of what we take in has to go out again to maintain good water systems. So with that, I'll put it. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. On to the last item, which is, well, before we go to non-public, last item in public is items for consideration by the Chair. Councillor Houlihan, I know you wanted to raise something.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'd just like to raise the tertiary precinct group that I believe we used to have operating, and the reason I'm bringing it up on here is because I've had some previous members of that group approach me around issues to do with waste. And I think Councillor Gary raised the issue around broken glass earlier. Broken glass, overcrowding in flats, and the lack of liquor licensing bars that students could go to in that student area. So there's a whole lot of issues that at the moment appear to be being missed by that group. It would be good to have a note on that as to when was the last time that group met to discuss waste issues particularly, and obviously the other things around issues with the student quarter.
I can give you the answer to when it last met, and that's an extremely long time ago. So do you want to also add when do we think it will meet?
That would be very useful. Thank you very much. It'd be good to have it as an action in the forward work program, if possible, as to when it will meet and a date for it to meet, and some action steps that would like to be discussed in there. There's quite a long list of things that I don't know whether others are getting them, but I'm getting quite a few phone calls and emails from people about issues that are coming up in that area. Obviously, it's O week, so there's lots of things happening, but that aside, a lot of those issues still carry on through the year.
So that's the tertiary precinct planning group.
Yep.
Are we clear which group we're meaning?
Yeah, well, I think it's the tertiary precinct planning group, because I just went back to my conflicts register because I'm on it.
So there's a governance group, and there's an operational group. And so the planning group I thought was the operational group.
Oh, I'm on it.
Right, I'll just check.
So
can we just be clear which?
Chair of Infrastructure, Chair of Planning and the Mayor, I think, are the three representatives from the city.
Because there's another group that has the Mayor, the
Vice
Chancellor of the three institutions.
Yeah,
so you're meaning the
other one.
Okay, fine. Just want to be clear which one.
Yeah, and it's the one, it is the forum which is supposed to be where we can start discussing this stuff. Okay,
My understanding is there's representatives from the university and from other areas associated with that.
Yep. Yeah, the council representatives are Infrastructure, Planning and the Mayor, I think.
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Benson-Pope.
Thank you. It's sort of semi-related, but most of you will have seen the critic letter to the editor that I've forwarded to you about vomit in George Street. My question is not so much about the vomit or student behaviour, but about our cleaning regime, and I'd just like some response from staff. I also forwarded that letter to ELT, so it's publicly, widely disseminated. I'd like a response from staff about the reality of our street cleaning in the CBD. Not the first time the issue's been raised, but it has been drawn to everyone's attention by that comment in the student newspaper.
And would you like that to come back as a staff reply to the committee? Very good. Councillor Barker.
Earlier in the meeting it was brought up about the mana whenua consultation over street names, and that you were going to put that in as a matter for the chair.
Ms McDonald, that was for you to, I'll raise it for you. So when we were talking about the road stopping and the road naming policies, there were questions raised as to how had mana whenua been talked to, and I think you were asking that the way to record that would be this person at Puketeraki or this person at Otako was talked to. Is that what? Okay, so something like identification of communication, or the level at which, like maybe Okaha.
Can we just raise it as a matter for the chair, and we'll look at it, because there would be potentially some challenges with naming individuals. In
Yeah,
a
no, I
report
agree,
like
but it just the spirit of what Ms McDonald was.
The spirit, yes. The operation of it would just need to think of potentially privacy concerns and things like that. Would it be?
Well, I think. Don't worry about it.
Would it be okay just to put the council at Puketeraki has been consulted, or the Otako Runaka has been consulted?
Yes, I think that's what the CEO is saying is that we'll work out what that is, and based on the privacy laws and other such things, we'll get it so that it's clear that there was a consultation. And
yeah.
Great, very good. That's more or less where you're going, right? That's where you were heading, right? In terms of good, thank you, Councillor Gary.
Just circling back to the last item for consideration by the chair, you might want to just check around the overlap with the Sophia Charter work, because that does have governance and operational represented, both from the university and other agencies and this organisation on that, and that does look at those matters. So you may just want to take that into account when you're thinking about that next meeting.
It's a Tertiary Precinct Planning Group meeting. Yeah. Okay then, if there's no more matters for consideration of the chair, then we'll move on to resolution to exclude the public. I move that the committee, pursuant to the provisions of the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987, exclude the public for the following parts of the proceedings of the meeting, namely C1, update of speed limit reversal required under the setting of speed limits rules 2024, and C2, commercial matters, Green Island. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Walker. All those in favour? Carried. We're now
against. Noted, please.
Noted. Tea break. 5 minutes, because I think if we famous last words. No, well, I was going to say I was going to have a hard stop at 12 for lunch, but I don't.